أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم، وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم، واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك. وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone this morning? Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, good, alhamdulillah. This morning we have a bit of a change in schedule again because Malaysia is sick and we only found out this morning. So it seems that I'm going to have to be here till, not have to, I'm going to be here till, about 10 o'clock inshallah. So we'll do Nahwu, Nasiha, Quran, right? And then Mullah Khalil will come here after break inshallah. Right, so let's jump straight into that inshallah. If there's anything that's not right on the online thing, then please just let me know. So,
we have the online people. I don't know if it will be possible, but to get a mic for the different side. I was speaking to brother here about it. Because sometimes you find it hard to hear what we are saying.
Yes, I did mention that to Mullah Khalil. It is possible. We just need to get the mics are not the problems. We need to get audio splitters so that we can plug in multiple mics. Yeah, mixer. So, inshallah, we'll try and arrange for that in due time. I don't know if the online people heard you speaking on behalf now. You asked if we could get mics for either sides of the class. Inshallah, we'll look into that. So that you can hear, online participants can hear, not when I'm speaking, but when everybody else is speaking. This mic is pretty long though. So if anybody has a long comment, I can just pass it to you. Right, so let's get into it. We start with our sarf. We just say our sarf skills once, and then we move into our nahwu bismillah. So let's go for it. Fa'ala, everybody, bismillah. Fa'ala, yufa'ilu, taf'ilan, mufa'ilun, mufa'alun, fa'il, la tufa'il. Third skill. Fa'ala, yufa'ilu, fi'alan, مفاعلة مفاعل مفاعل فاعل لا تفاعل. Fourth skill. أفعل يفعل إفعالا مفعل مفعل أفعل لا تفعل. Fifth skill. تفعل يتفعل تفعلا متفعل متفعل تفعل لا تتفعل. Sixth skill. تفاعل يتفاعل تفاعلا متفاعل متفاعل تفاعل لا تتفاعل. Seventh skill. انفعل ينفعل انفعالا منفعل منفعل انفعل لا تنفعل. Eighth skill. افتعل يفتعل افتعالا مفتعل مفتعل افتعل لا تفتعل. Ninth skill. افعل يفعل افعلالا مفعل افعل لا تفعل. Tenth skill. استفعل يستفعل استفعالا مستفعل مستفعل استفعل لا تستفعل. Right, alhamdulillah. I'm going to just ask you some questions in that quickly. What is the masdar of the fourth bab? What's it? If'alan, good. What is the ismul fa'il of the 10th bab? Ismul fa'il. That's a masdar. Mustaf'ilun, right, there we go. What is the amr of the second bab? Fa'il, right. What is the nahi of the 7th bab? La tanfa'il. Right, okay, good. Just jogging your brains a little bit. So that's one thing you must focus on also whilst learning those skills, right? And the idea is that in having it like in saying it so much and having it ingrained in your mind, then at least when we come across a word like that, you can kind of locate where it fits in, right? So inshallah, we'll just continue with that. But now, for now, we're busy with our Nahwu, right? And we are nearly finished with this book. We did, or at least with this section of Nahwu, wherein we're focusing on the marfu'at, only the functions that are fulfilled by halatul raf. And what were those, the main ones that we looked at? We looked at the fa'il, naibul fa'il, it's all on the board, khabar, mubtada, and then we looked at another lesson on the mubtada, the delayed mubtada, how that works, but it's still essentially just the mubtada, it's the same thing. Then we had the ismu kana and its sisters. We had another lesson on that, which we were finishing up last week, and then the khabar of inna and its sisters. So that's our last lesson that we have in this book. For homework, we had page number 18, if I remember correctly, and it was the exercise attached to the second lesson on Kaana. Right? I asked you to translate the sentences, but in addition to that, find for me the ism of Kaana and the khabar of Kaana. Right? And we reminded ourselves that, look, this thing is like a combination of a jumla fi'aliyya and a jumla ismiyya. Right? In reality, it's a jumla ismiyya that's just been affected by Kaana. But we also know that Kaana is a form of a verb, and so the way it affects other things is like a verb would affect parts of a sentence. Right? And also, we reminded ourselves that we can look for the ism of Kaana just like we look for the fa'il of a verb, because Kaana is essentially a verb. And also, the way we look for the khabar is exactly the same way we look for a normal khabar. Right? Except that here, when it's one word, then it is going to show that it's in halatun nasb. Right? Whereas a normal Kaana, a normal khabar is in halatul. Don't look anyway, come on, this is khabar is normally in halatul raf, mubtada and khabar both in raf normally, right? Okay, so let's look. Picture a bit smaller quickly. Okay, let's do the first 3 examples and then you can pick some for me too. Let's look at number 1. Kanu yakthibuna. Actually, we did that one last week. Let's look at the next one. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. What does it mean, firstly? وَمَا كَانُوا, they were not, مُهْتَدِينَ, rightly guided. From which, this is a side question. Which hal does that word muhtadina come from? Yes, it's in nasb. It's in nasb. Why is it in nasb in the sentence? Because it's the khabar of Kaana, right? But where does it come from? Like what bab? Comes from the eighth bab, correct. Which form of the word is it? Ismul fa'il, correct. But here it's a plural form, right? The word, the rooted are ha, dal, and ya. Hada yahdi. This is on the eighth bab. Ihtada yahtadi. And the ismul fa'il will be muhtadin. And when it's plural, it will be muhtaduna. Or in nasb and jar, muhtadina. Right. So wherever we can see that ma is for negation, right? Ma kana. What's the ism of kana here? The wow at the end, right? We look for it the same way like we look for a fa'il. Ili. And you can see there's something at the end there. Kana, kanu. It's the wow. Then what's the khabar of kana? Well, there's only that one word left. Muhtadina. Wa ma kanu muhtadina. They were not guided. Okay. Let's look at the next one. كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله. كانوا يكفرون بآيات الله. So we have a kana there. We're looking for the ism and the khabar. What's the ism? Ism of kana. The waw at the end, right? Very easy to see. The same way we look for it. The same way we look for a fa'il. Okay. So that's how. What do we call that? That's how. Ismu kana, right? Now what's our khabaru kana? So we already know we have they were. What's the khabar? Yakfuruna bi ayatillah. Is that what you say? Is that the khabar? That's the whole thing? Is there a single word, a single noun here that I can point out to being the khabar? No. Yakfuruna is already a verb, isn't it? And a verb forms a verbal sentence. So our khabar here, if we remember the different types of khabars, which page is that on? Let's just see quickly. Page 9. Right? The khabar can either be one word, it can be a harful jar and ismul majroor, it can be a dharf and mudafun ilayh, it can be a verbal sentence, or it can be a nominal sentence. Here we have a yakfuruna. I told you it's a verb, it forms a verbal sentence. So that verbal sentence is going to be our khabar. And what's the verbal sentence? Yakfuruna. We can see the verb is yakfuruna. What's the fa'il? The waw is the fa'il. And you can see it's in concordance with the kanu. And then the bi ayatillahi is a harful jar, ismul majroor, that's connected to yakfuruna. What is it that they disbelieve in? They disbelieve bi ayatillah, in the verses of Allah. And you can also see that Allah is mudafun ilayh to ayat. Right? Now how are we going to translate this? What do we have here? We have a kana followed by a present tense verb. What did I tell you last week? How do we translate that? Past continuous tense. Kanu yakfuruna bi ayatillah. They used to disbelieve in the signs of Allah. They used to disbelieve in the verses of Allah. So this is my ismu kana, and this is my khabaru kana. Let's look at the next one. Kunta faddan. Okay, that's super simple. Kunta, what's the ismu kana there? The ta at the end, right? Ta'ul fa'il. Kunta. It's not the feminine form, that's kanat. So if you go down the scale, it will be kana, kanu, kanat, kunna. So if I say kana, the fa'il is inside its huwa. if it's kanu, the fa'il is the waw at the end. If it's kanat, it's a standard feminine form. Right? The fa'il is inside, it's here. If I say kunna, the fa'il is the noon niswa at the end, feminine noon at the end. Then if I say kunta, you were, the fa'il is the ta at the end, the ta'ul fa'il. And then kuntum, it's again the ta'ul fa'il. Kunti, it's again the ta'ul fa'il. Kuntunna, it's again the ta'ul fa'il. Or you can say maybe the noon niswa there, but I think the focus will be on the ta, if I remember correctly. Then kuntu again will be the ta'ul fa'il, and kunna will be the na'ul fa'il. So here we have kunta, the ta at the end. That shows me what the fa'il is. And what does it mean here? Kunta, you were, you one male. Kunta, you were fadhan. Fadhan means like wash. Kunta fadhan. This actually comes in the Quran negating this for Rasulullah. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, if you were harsh and hard-hearted, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ, then they would have dispersed from around you. People wouldn't have gathered so much around you. So kunta fadhan, you were harsh. What's the ismul fa'il? Sorry, the ismu kana? That ta. What's the khabaru kana? Fadhan. Right. Let's look at the next one. Just for interesting. Kana aliman hakiman. What does it mean, firstly? Firstly, okay, we have a kana. We have to find the ismu kana. Where's the ismu kana? Firstly, I looked at the end of it. Is there anything on the end? No. Then I look to the left. Is there anything on the left? Nothing in Raf. Right? Okay. Is there anything inside it? Yes. What's inside here? Huwa. So he was. He was what? Aliman Hakiman. So what's my khabar here?
Aliman Hakiman.
So the ikhtilaf al-ulama. It
without the context of the sentence, it would look like a mawsuf sifa.
without the context, it would look like a mawsuf sifa. Then where would the mawsuf be? Those are both descriptions. What we're going to call it is, I mean, if there was a wah there, it would have been very easy, isn't it? Kana aliman wa hakiman. He was aliman, all-knowing, and then aliman would be my khabar. And when there was wah, well, that would be a waw al-atf, and hakiman would just be ma'atuf. It's added to it in a list. But now I don't have a wah. So what's happening? We just call this, as some of you said, khabar number 1 and khabar number 2. So here there's a huwa inside here. That's the ism. That's going to be khabar number 1, khabar number 2. Why can we not consider this a jumla ismiya? And is the khabar here a jumla ismiya on its own independently? Because remember, the jumla ismiya has to have a mubtada and a khabar. And if it was a jumla ismiya, an independent jumla ismiya, then the mubtada and the khabar would both be in a raf as well. And here we can see that they are both in nasb. So it's not going to work like that. It's khabar number 1 and khabar number 2. Whatever Arabic numerals. Just give me a second quickly. Anybody have a tissue? Hello. Okay. So we had khabar number 1, khabar number 2. Were there any other ones that you had any issue with? Number 9. Good. ليس له سلطان. ليس له سلطان. So we have a laysa. Laysa is what? What kind of word is it? It's a fi'al naqis, or you can tell me that it's one of the sisters of Kaana, right? So we know we're going to be looking for a ism and a khabar. Ism of laysa and the khabar of laysa. Now, how do we go about finding it? We're busy with number 9, right? How do we go about that? Well, we first look for the ism. Is there anything on laysa? Laysa will change like this. Do you know how laysa changes? How do you say the scale of laysa? Laysa, laysu, laysat. Now, lasna, lasna, lasta, lastum, lasti, lastunna, lastu, lasna. It's negative, right? To negate something. Just think if he's negative in his las. Okay, it's flow. But maybe it will make you remember, right? It changes to less. Lasna. That's how it changes. So laysa here, we need to find the ism of it. Where do you think it's going to be now? Remember I told you, look for it the same way you look for a fa'il. Right, so is there anything at the end of laysa? No. To the left of it. Remember when you look for a fa'il, generally you skip over the harful jar and ism al-majrur, right? So do the same thing here. Do the same thing here. So is there anything in the rafa there next to it? On the left? Yes, this word sultan. And that is going to be my ism. ليس سلطان له. ليس سلطان له. And lahu is going to be in the place of the khabar. So here it's like the mubtada is muakhar, but here the ism of laysa is muakhar, and the khabar is muqaddam. And remember we could do that in our normal sentences as well, right? We could have a mubtada muakhar and the khabar muqaddam. So here the same thing's happening. And when does that usually happen? When the mubtada is indefinite, right? And the khabar is usually a harful jar and ismul majrur. So here you can see the exact same things happening. Right? The exact same things happening. It's just we're negating it using laysa. The sentence would have been lahu sultan. Lahu sultan. He has authority. He has authority. Now it's just laysa lahu sultan. He does not have authority. So the ism is sultanun and the khabar is lahu. and it's in the form of a harful jar and ism majroor. So usually the khabar of laysa should be in halatul what? Halatul nasb. But can it be in halatul nasbiyah, or is there anything that will show the halatul nasbiyah? No. Why? Because it's not a single word. Remember, if we go back to page 9 and look at our list of khabars, harful jar and ism majroor is under the section where we say there's no visible khabar. Right? Only when the khabar is one word, then we say there's a visible khabar. And all of the others, we say that there's no visible khabar. And under that, we can see a harful jar and ismul majroor. Right, so the same exact thing is happening here. We have no visible khabar, but this whole construction here is in the place of my khabar. Any other ones? Oh my God. Okay, that's a simple one. It just looks because it's long. Number 12. Number 12. Do I want to go there now? Let's see, how do you translate it? The reason why we have had difficulty in this, I must apologize. Would have been difficult because of that lamb. But let's see. You know what? Just give me a second. I'm just getting a book quickly, right? This book is like a very, very important book in Nahwu. Think about how I translated, how you can explain it to me. I'm just getting a book because I always delay on getting this list of lambs because there's so many of them. There's a section of a book on lambs, different meanings of lamb. Not all of them appear in the Quran. But this one here is called Lamul Juhud. Have you ever heard of that before? You heard of it? Lamul Juhud. No. So I'm going to open up this book quickly. Now this is one volume. It is one. Okay, let me see if I can get the lamb. That's the nicest copy. There we go. See here, السابع عشر. That means 17th meaning of lamb. And I said even the end of it. 20, 21. Anyways, let's just get to Lam al-Juhud quickly. توكيد النفي وهو الداخل الله وما كان الله. Okay, here we have. Just see what page this is quickly. توكيد النفي 232. So there's 22 meanings here. ما كان الله محلا داخل على الفعل. Okay. Okay. Now the reason it looks like skew and stuff like this is because this is probably a scanned PDF of them.
Think about the quality of some Arabic books.
Yeah.
Even the translations, English books about Islam. Then quality is always not always like this.
Yeah. That's true. People don't want to pay for the books, that's why.
Yeah, the books are usually very cheap.
And also, I mean, it has to do with the development of publishing houses in the Arab world. Like nowadays, you'll find some very nice, nice quality stuff, very nicely laid out prints. Yeah. Yeah, because what they do is oftentimes they get non-native Arabic-speaking people to check this stuff. So, non-native English people speaking. So you have like a very clumsy translation. And it takes an adept translator to read a book in one language and then, whilst being true to the message of the author, convey that in another language. Because you have to consider the nuances of that language, the figures of speech of the target language. You need to understand the figures of speech in the source language and convey that properly and appropriately in the target language. Now, Arabic sometimes a very descriptive language. You'll find this guy uses like 10 sifas for something, and then you're like, well, they all mean the same thing to me in English. How do I translate it? So sometimes it's difficult, and people do rush jobs on it, and that's what happens. Like, you know, one book that stands out clearly in my mind in this regard, because of the fact that there's a number of translations of it. There's at least 2 translations that I know of. There is Saviors of the Islamic Spirit by Shahab al-Hassan Ali al-Nadwi. He writes about some prominent scholars in Islam. You know, scholars were almost like very like landmark scholars in Islamic history. So there's an older translation of it, which is of that style. Like, you know, it's almost like a more literal kind of translation, and then there's a modern revised translation of it, which reads a lot better, more easy. But I can tell you, it takes time. It takes time, and nobody pays to do this stuff. So
We don't have any publishing houses here in South Africa.
we have, we do have some publishing houses, but not like big scale publishing houses. Mullah Abdurrahman Khan has his Darut Turath al-Islami, and they publish, they do some publishing. ETI, yeah. ETI publishes. Yes, yes. So like whenever like any of our guys have stuff, they just do it through Mullah Abdurrahman. Mullah Muhammad, when he has books, and he publishes, like Mullah Muhammad prints it for him. etc. Mullah Mu'adh wrote something recently. I think he had it published with Mu'adh Ali. And the quality of this stuff is fairly nice. You might think, okay, some of them have that yellow pages, but the yellow pages is actually a choice because it's easier on the eye. Anyways, you know, us vain ones, we like the nice, crisp looking white pages. But the yellow pages are actually easier on the eye. Anyways, point is getting off the topic now. I just wanted to go through this meaning of this lam here. When you have a negative kana, right? Ma kana, then it's oftentimes followed by a lam that we call lamul juhud, especially if the khabar of kana is a verbal sentence, like we have here. Let's look at our example. Where is it now? وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ. Firstly, what's the ism of this ma kana here? Shouldn't be hard to see, right? Allah. Ma kana Allah. That's the ism. And the khabar? The rest of the thing, right? That whole verbal sentence. لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Now, you might have come across a lam that enters at the beginning of a present tense verb before. لِيَفْعَلَ. And usually it means to, or so that, in order that. Right? But here, it doesn't mean that. When you have a negative kana, ma kana, and then on the khabar, there's this li, then that's usually what we call lamul juhud. Right? Lamul juhud. And the meaning that it conveys is emphasizing the negation. Emphasizing the negation. Right? Yeah, in Mughni al-Labib, he calls it the seventh meaning of lam, yeah, he says tawkidun nafi, emphasizing the negation. وهي الداخلة في اللفظ على الفعل المسبوق بما كان أو بلم يكن ناقصتين مسندتين لما أسند إليه الفعل المقرون باللام، نحو وما كان الله ليطلعكم على الغيب، أو لم يكن الله ليغفر لهم، ويسميها أكثرهم لام الجحود. Most people name this lam الجحود لملازمتها للجحد. Why? Because it's always coupled to something that negates. Jahd means like to deny something. So ma kana, you can see it's a negative kana. It's going to negate something. It's going to deny something. And this lam then comes with the meaning of emphasizing the negative. So you can translate it as Allah would never. Allah would never. Or Allah would certainly not. Right? Why am I pointing this one out separately? Because it's different to the normal lam that you know for tawqid. Why? How does that one look? That one's la, not li. Right? Innaka la antal halimur rashid. La, that's lam. That lam for emphasis is usually la. Here we have li. And this li is also different to that la. That la doesn't affect the verb in any way. Sometimes it comes on a la fi dalali mubin, comes on a harf, comes on a ism, comes on a fi'al, doesn't matter, doesn't affect it in any way. It's just for emphasis. This one does affect the verb. How does it affect the verb? The verb here we have yudhi'a. It's supposed to be yudhi. Oh, right. So how do you think it affects the verb? Puts it into nasb. Right. Rather, when you start getting into Mughni al-Labib, this book is we have 880 pages in 2 volumes. Right, the first volume, by and large, he just takes the various meanings of individual letters. So here is Harful Lam, right? So we'll speak about Lam al-Mufrada. Lam starts on page number 228. Let's see where it goes until. There's 22 meanings of Lam. So where is this now? Yeah, there's a lot. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff. Okay, yes, I know. So maybe what page did I say it started on now? 220 some 228. It goes up until about 200 and we still was with Lam actually is more. Maybe it's about 260 or so. If you just look at the letter Hamza, you'll find so many meanings for Hamza that you don't think of. Like at the beginning of a sentence can mean like to call out somebody as well. Fatima mahlan. It means like, oh, Fatima. Usually we know it just to mean like to change something to change the sentence to a question, but there's other meanings for it as well. There's a lot. It's not like you must never feel like you can never. Yeah, like that doesn't even come in the Quran. There's no harfun nida in the Quran. But the fact that it doesn't come in the Quran doesn't mean it's not important. There may be interpretations that can use them. And then also, there's also obviously the hadith corpus that's important to us that may use them. Things like that.
Linguistic tools exist in like modern Arabic, modern Arabic.
Yeah, they do. They essentially have the same meanings. The question was, do these linguistic tools still exist in Arabic language? You see, in modern standard Arabic, I mean, they could still be used, but generally, I think that it's a bit more watered down. Yeah, if you compare Old English to what we speak now. The benefit of knowing these things would be to engage with classical books, classical poetry, so that you can understand like the essence of Arabic. And like I'm sure I've mentioned this many times before. In Arabic, if you want to know how a word can be used, you don't go to a dictionary. There were no Arabic dictionaries. You go to Arabic poetry, to the Jahili and classical Arabic poetry. And then you see how the words were used there, and that's like a proof for the fact that you can use it in a certain way or with a certain meaning. And the same applies to Quran. Obviously, Quran is a proof in Arabic language, hadith, and then certain scholars, because of the eloquence, they became known as like proofs in the language. Like Imam Shafi'i rahmahullah ta'ala, he was like a proof in the Arabic language. So you like, if you want to prove that the word has a meaning, then you quote a line of poetry of Imam Shafi'i using it like that, or of a Jahili poet using it like that. And that's why you'll find tafsir books littered with Arabic poetry, because when a mufassir wants to tell you that I'm interpreting this word like this, he has to tell you why am I interpreting it like this, or why it can be interpreted like that. So he'll say, well, this line of poetry uses the word like this, and therefore it's a valid interpretation for the word. He never says, go check in Hans Meyer, Lexicon, none of those. Even Al-Wasit, one of the Arabic dictionaries, he doesn't do that. Mufradat, Quran, nothing like that. Right, so even these meanings of these mufradat, the same way it's proven. There was no science of Nahwu and Sarf and Arabic rhetoric, or any of the, none of these sciences existed pre-Islam. It was a very organic thing. They got codified for the sake of studying the Quran.
I think there's such an immense body of knowledge that Muslims, Muslims, you don't actually understand this whole way, right? Like there's such a deep-rooted tradition of scholarship that, I don't know, like in everyday Muslim, you don't realize that it's not.
So Irshad is saying that. Irshad is saying that, Tawfiq is saying that, so there's a thing here online that there seems to be so much, like the corpus of knowledge seems to be so vast that exists in the ambit of Islamic knowledge, or that Islamic scholars have contributed, that but a lay Muslim doesn't know about. Guru, I can tell you, you haven't seen the start of it. Go, you know, it would be enlightening to just maybe visit an Arabic library one day. You will see genres of Islamic sciences that you never heard of before. Once I was doing a bit of a, I don't know if it was a podcast or class or something with MSA students. So they wanted to know about like traditional Islamic knowledge. And then my talk was basically going through a list of subjects or sciences in the Islamic, that should be in an Islamic syllabus, and or like in a tertiary level Islamic syllabus, and saying what those subjects are. The talk was maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I was like just saying, this is the name of the subject, this is what's in that subject. And it wasn't even exhaustive. Like, I mean, most people don't know. People very easy at times to disregard hadith. But like, they don't even know the mechanics behind hadith. So I just show these people one book. This is now a book that I own. It's in my little library, 24 volumes. In that book, the book is 24 volumes, not even a book of hadith. All that book is about is biographies of narrators of hadith. That's just one book in the genre, 24 volumes. It just says, you know, in any sanad, but this book specifically only focused on the 6 main compilations of hadith, right? They're not the only compilation or source books of hadith, they're just the most famous ones, right? So it only looks at the chains of narration. If a person's name is mentioned in that chain of narration, then you'll find a biography of that person in that book, Tahdhib al-Kamal. And it will tell you, you know, who he was, what his full name was, what mistakes people may make in his name. And when I say his name, I mean his name, his father's name, his grandfather's name, all of that stuff, his nickname, and his tribe's name, and the area that he's from. They'll tell you who his students were, who he learned from. They'll tell you sometimes when those students learned from him, because, you know, maybe his memory started dipping when he was older, when he became older. So they'll say this student learned from him in the latter stage of his life. So that you know that when that person narrates from him, then you have to be a little bit more skeptical about the validity of that narration. You'll find there like incidences that prove that he's a trustworthy person, or you'll find stories that indicate that he's maybe not such a reliable person. And like sometimes the things are like super petty, but for the sake of having the highest standards of rigor in choosing who will accept a narration from, they will go to that length. So when I see people like just saying, oh no, it's a hadith, we don't have to, I think to myself, bro, I wonder if you know what goes into authenticating that one little line that you're sitting with. You'll find statements of the scholars saying that I heard this hadith, this narration, from 18 different people in different cities. And then he'll still travel to another city like 300 kilometers away, just because he wanted to hear it from another person. The same thing, he already knows the hadith. And I want to hear the same hadith from that person, that muhaddith over there, to compare it with all of the other narrations and to check, what is the most authentic version. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, like he says, I heard the same narration from 18 scholars with different chains, and I still want to hear it from that person because I heard that he knows this hadith well. So the scholars of hadith would they would have the daily activities. They would go to the scholar, listen to the scholar, whatever. Then at night, they would have like revision sessions almost. So like an informal setting of hadith where they exchange. I tell you some of my hadith, you tell me some of your hadith kind of thing, or you tell me. But now, you see, if you're on the same level like me, and you have a hadith that I don't have, and I can reach the scholar that you heard it from, then I won't want to narrate it from you. I want to get it from the person that you heard it from. Right? So then you tell me, okay, look here, I heard, we now in Kufa, you tell me, listen, I heard this hadith from the scholar in Basra. Then I say, okay, I'm off to Basra now. It's almost like Pokemon, I gotta get them all. But that's how the muhaddithin work. Seriously, that's how the muhaddithin work. And yeah, I don't know why we're on this now. Yeah, but it is an important thing. Muslims don't know what exists in the library of Islam. They don't even know the genres of books that exist in an Islamic library. And it's, if you just know it, it will give you so much more confidence. This thing, this Islam is watertight. And that's why, for people that find themselves in my position at times where people ask us for things about Islam, I'm telling you, I have complete confidence that Islam has the answer to any issue that people bring up against. I have complete confidence. I may not know the answer. I may not know the answer as an individual, but I know the answers to be found. And seldom is the case where I'm going to have to come up with a novel answer all on my own. And most of the time, I'll find some reference to it in the classical works, or I'll find like a more primitive form of the exact same problem addressed that I'll maybe just have to adapt to our, a postmodern philosophy or whatever the case may be. But the a primitive form of that thing will already be discussed. That's why I'm so confident that if people tell me, this person left Islam or that person left Islam, I'm confident. Look here, if you have a question, you have a doubt, you have a doubt sincerely, we'll have an answer for you. The library, the corpus of Islam, scholar of Islam will have an answer for you. No matter how bad the problem may seem. And for me, why shouldn't I be confident? The truth is confident. It's true. So, yeah. And I think it just stems also from being exposed to that a little bit. Alhamdulillah, I was lucky. I got to sit with Mullah Taha, who was like a library in his own right. But Even if you just go sit in his library, just visit it. People drive down the into. One day, if you drive down the into and you're going to where Manus or whatever, just make a detour, turn off there. Don't be shocked when you see the madrasa. But just ask if we can go into the library. And just look, this is now a small library that we have in our. Look at the rest of the madrasa, and then you'll see, okay, this is a small library. But you'll be shocked out of your mind when you see the depth and enormity of the tradition. People scoff at it because I think oftentimes they don't know it. But it's deep. And the thing is, it's actually not accessible. It is accessible. What has made it inaccessible? I mean, it's not intrinsically inaccessible. The reason that it may be inaccessible to us is because of our own pedagogy, our own education systems. We don't put in our education systems what enable our youth to access it. We're doing Arabic, this stuff now, when we are 30 years old and whatever the case may be. This Nahwu and Sarf is like what we should have taught to our 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. I mean, I was listening to one Mauritanian scholar. He was speaking about a game that his mother would play to him. He actually says, they asked him in that interview with him, don't you go to school? He says, no, we don't go to school. The interview asked him, like, why don't you go to school? He says, because you don't learn anything at school. Now, that's obviously an assessment of their schooling, and Allah Alam, what we learn of benefit in our schools. But he says, like, what they would do is their moms would play games with him. One of the games their moms would play with him is that they read to them Arabic poetry, right? And then it's like a game for them. The mom will ask them, maybe she takes a line of the Burda, for example. قد تنكر العين ضوء الشمس من رمد وينكر الفم طعم الماء من سقم. What the line of poetry means is, well, the meaning of the verse doesn't matter. But it says, oftentimes eyes will deny the brightness of the sun because of an illness in the eye. وَيُنْكِرُ الْفَمُ طَعْمَ الْمَاءِ مِنْ سَقَمِ. And mouths will deny the sweet taste of some food or the sweetness of water because of sickness. It's talking about people who deny the Quran. Don't be amazed at those people, those jealous people who deny the Quran. Feigning ignorance, whilst they actually are, they see the miraculous nature of the Quran, but still they deny. So you would say that, what would happen? Our moms will come to us and they'll read to us these poems, and we hear the poems all the time because, they have gatherings to recite poetry, and, that's how they make merry and things like that. And when people are sick, they'll go recite the Burda with them and things like that. So he says, our moms would recite the poem to us. Then there's a game. Then she'll pick out the word, say qad. Then I must tell her harfun amila غير عاملة. So I say qad harfun تأتي على الفعل غير عاملة. It's a harf. It enters upon a verb and it doesn't affect the verb. Or it affects when it enters upon this type of verb. And this is the meaning that it has when it enters on a past tense verb. This is the meaning when it enters on a present tense verb. This is how it affects the verb. And then you'll say, okay, then the mom will go qad tunkiru. Then I must tell her, tunkiru is a fi'al mudari'. The root letters are nakara. And then she'll ask, okay, what other forms can these letters come? Then I must say, nakara, ranaka. And then I must basically give all the combinations of those root letters. Then I must say, these ones get used, these ones don't get used. Then they ask him now, how old are you when you play this? And he says, usually moms maybe play to the kids when they're like 5. But I think he said his mom played it with him when he was like 3. I thought to myself, and if you must hear them, I can play a video of Sheikh, one of the Mauritanians speaking. They're like literally desert people, but they are highly, highly intelligent. They literally live in this. You can't imagine how much. Okay, let me show you how they live. We were already distracted, so. Yeah, this is like one of the scholars. This is like how they sit and learn. In that thing, he asks, they ask him, so he gives like some of the pedagogy, and then he says that no, we can start going to sit with the sheikh when we're 10 years old. But how we have to do it is you first have to go to the sheikh. The sheikh will tell you the book that you want to learn. Can you see in the background other places? This is, they'll maybe have one copy of the book in the area. So the sheikh tells you the book. And then you must write it down. And then you must memorize it. And then you can go sit in his class. Can we just do what I did there? Yeah, crazy. Here's the scholar that I was speaking about, Muhammad Hassan Dido. Yes, he gives that interview. His syllabus, actually, he enters students when they're 15 minimum, and the course is 17 years. Yeah, but when you enter the course, you already have to be hafiz of the Quran in 2 riwayat minimum. So another level. But that's like, I mean, I'm just telling you that, you know, what we have access to, this is like basic watered down stuff. Like the only, you know, the only scholar that I know that like access that in the English speaking world. Okay, maybe there's few scholars, but Malata was one of them. You know, one who I hold in very high regard, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad. There's few others, but not very many. We learn in luxury. Okay, if you come to our madrasa, we'll think you're also in Mauritania, but we still in the relative luxury. But I'm telling you, the libraries of Islam and the pedagogy of Islam is deep. And the thing is, if you're busy learning Arabic poetry, even just through hearing it when you're that young, it's accessible. It's very, very accessible. In fact, any Islamic book in the Torah, you'll probably get it online for free.
Is it anyway? I don't know. Was the Islamic like knowledge to sort of be modernized and it works? I don't know, like the Western knowledge, the internet, like not only books, and you can't only get the knowledge from like a certain scholar in a certain land.
Certainly, yes. I mean, and all of this, even things like Mizan or attempts at that. The question is, can we modernize that? You know, those Islamic pedagogies? Yes, we can, and like most of our efforts are attempts at that. But it's very difficult living in societies with the pressures of Western society. It's expensive to even be poor in a Western society. So the amount of time and effort that's required in relation to building those proper scholars takes a lot of sacrifice. You see, when you live in a village, like if you go to a place like Tahim, even for example, you find people doing that still, also memorizing all the texts, and it's not just about memorizing. One of the big issue is just memorizing. But you know, if you're starting from young and then you're focusing on memorizing texts and things like that, that's all good and well. But they can, because the society is like that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's just a cop-out excuse, but it's a norm in the society. Whereas for us, maybe the financial pressures, that we impose upon ourselves also is a lot more. But I don't know. It's a deep question. But we try, I think we try. And there are more and more institutes like that opening up. But I think there's one thing you're never gonna do away with, and that's the barakah of going to sit with a scholar. You see, what we're essentially asking is, can we make it more accessible in terms of, can I, switch on my, no offense to the online participants, but can we make it such that, I can put on my screen and then have the knowledge then? Yes, that can certainly be done. We can have classes like that. But I can guarantee you, it's not going to be the same like that person that traveled to the scholar, sat by his feet. Because what you learn of the tradition that doesn't pertain to the text in front of you is oftentimes a lot more than what's contained in the book. And I can say that from first-hand experience. Alhamdulillah, I was privileged to be in the company of somebody like Malata, and even in the company of other scholars with him, and even without him when I did some of my own travels. You can say, okay, I'm going to come and sit for this dars now, and then you learn something. But what you learn when the dars is finished, or what you learn in the tangents, oh, that's what makes you old. So, yeah.
Balancing the amount of scholars that perhaps like the way it is now, producing quality scholars, but very few maybe. Whereas like a Western society produces lots and lots of scholars, but maybe they don't go into depth of their knowledge, like in their fields basically.
Look, that is correct, yes. The focus in Islamic pedagogy was always on breadth in knowledge. But it wasn't about super specializing in one thing and becoming oblivious to everything else. It was about being holistic. And even, I have an issue with the fact, with many, even if it doesn't mean you're traveling to a Muslim land that you're going to get a traditional Islamic pedagogy. Because you can go to a Muslim land and go to university as well. And yes, though there may be the teachers may be more spiritually charged and stuff like that than a normal cold professor-student relationship that we often get at our universities here. But it's still essentially university. It's not the same. I don't know how to explain it, but just travel one day if you ever go to, like wherever, just go ask people that they to point you to like who they consider to be a sheikh. And then go sit there with that person and then you'll see, that's different. That's different, that's different. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, maybe you see the thing is we look at the physical aspect of it. I'm going there, I'm sitting, I'm picking up a book, I'm reading it, it's going into my brain, it's finished. But we don't also look at the fact that, look here, if that kid is learning from his mom, these poems, or even not his own mom, but one of the ladies in the area who look after these children like her own, that's coupled with du'as. I can tell you, if you put the man hours that Maulana Taha spent in studying and think that you won't get the same result. There's a degree of that that's like, it's tawfiqun min Allah. It's Allah gives it to you. And you can't factor that into it's not a cold material thing. You can't factor that into just into a syllabus. That's from the people. So yeah, there's a lot of questions to ask and how we can actually revive this stuff. But inshallah, we need to put minds together. We need to put minds together. We need to put resources together. If you look at it, this is now not an advert to anything for madrasa. I implore you, go look at the madrasa, visit the madrasa one day. Nobody there has an issue with anything, right? But I'm telling you, you'll be shocked out of your mind at the basic state of this madrasa. And then you'll think about, look here, who studied at this madrasa? Like, many of the big scholars in our community studied at madrasa or taught at madrasa. Even abroad, you'll see guys on Mizan Institute. No, I was there at that madrasa. People don't know what that madrasa looks like. You know, we have some students from Canada and America and stuff like that. When they show the, the colleagues and stuff, pictures of the madrasa that they studied at, they like, oh, you like went to the jungle too. And one of my colleagues, he actually taught me for a bit as well, Mullah Azhar. He and Mullah Riyad Saluji, you know Mullah Riyad Saluji. Mullah Riyad Saluji used to be with us at Mizan as well. They were both from Canada. So he told me one day they were driving to madrasa together. And then as they were driving, Mullah Riyad just stopped him and he told him, bro, how on earth did we end up in the jungle of Africa? And yeah, that's like the state of the madrasa. Nobody invests in it really. So what do we expect to happen? The people that go there, I was like a scurvy student there. I used to come with my car, so I used to drive to the garage to go to the toilet. The other guys that live there, there's no hot water, bro. They make whatever. So they go to the bush, go relieve themselves and stuff. It's crazy, bro. But seriously, it's crazy. Like I said, I was a student. If I needed to, bro, I'm driving home. It's like, yeah. But it requires effort all around. And but the funny thing is, I don't think most of the people, even Mullah Khalil, okay, he was Scouts guy and stuff like that, but I think he was also maybe one of the most stable students. But we wouldn't replace it for much. It's like I think I only went to the toilet at the madrasa after like 3 years. No, I think I was just like forced, compelled. Yeah. But the library is the prize of the madrasa. Like that's what I'm telling you. If you ever get a chance, man, even if it's ladies, whatever, I'm sure we can make a plan. Just go. It's just off the N2. Make a turn in there. Don't not to look at what the madrasa looks like. Don't look at what the madrasa. Just look at the library. Close your eyes. Go into the library, and then it's not. When I say it's not filthy, man. It's just very basic. And we was doing Mizan filter. Yeah, we can actually. We stop there, and then we'll just tell you, okay, this section is these books, with different genres. It'll be nice. Inshallah.
Just camp at the
Too close to home. Okay, that was footnote for those that didn't find it interesting. I apologize. That was a very long tangent. But yeah. What do we do now? Mullah Riyad is now in Turkey. Riyad's in Turkey. He was we did a podcast with after Mullah Taha passed away.
Oh, yes.
It was a Mizan class. It was yeah. And then that guy's biased, mashallah. Yeah. We're supposed to end at 10 o'clock. I thought today we're gonna have a long class. We just went on a super tangent. So what do we do now? Let's maybe just do like 2 verses of this. And then continue next week, inshallah. I'm sorry about that tangent, but I really do think it's very important to actually,